Hello, and welcome to another episode of Wrestler Spotlight. I'm the Maritime Warrior, and today we're taking a look at an underrated wrestler from the history of pro wrestling, Kodo Fuyuki. Kodo Fuyuki would start his wrestling career under the name Hiromichi Fuyuki in IWE, that's the International Wrestling Enterprise. He would wrestle there until IWE would close down in 1981. At that point, he would join All Japan Pro Wrestling. Kodo Fuyuki's first few years in All Japan, he was mostly wrestling underneath matches until he would go to Mexico. In 1984, while in Mexico, he would wrestle for both EMLL and the UWA before going to the United States and Central States Wrestling in 1985. He would work Texas All-Star Wrestling in 1986, and he would work Japan Pro Wrestling in 1987. In 87, he would also make his way to the legendary Memphis territory to work for Jerry Jarrett and Jerry Lawler. When Fuyuki would come back from excursion, he would get his biggest push that he would have in All Japan. That would be joining Tenryu's Revolution Army. In 1988, Fuyuki would team up with fellow Revolution Army member Toshiaki Kawada, and they would form the tag team Footloose, winning the All-Asia Tag Team titles 3 times between 88 and 1990. This would be the highlight of Kodo Fuyuki's career in All Japan Pro Wrestling, but soon after, in 1990, he would leave with Tenryu to join the newly formed SWS, Super World of Sports. When Fuyuki had come back from excursion, he had changed his name from Hiromichi Fuyuki to Samson Fuyuki, and he would take that name with him to Super World of Sports. One of Fuyuki's final matches for All Japan happened on April 13, 1990 at a WWF New Japan All Japan Super Shows. So he was in the same arena as guys like Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan, Macho Man Randy Savage, so must have been a great experience for Fuyuki. The SWS was never really a successful promotion. The company would not even survive 3 years. Highlights for Fuyuki during this time: he had a few tag team matches teaming up with Genichiro Tenryu, and he had a few tag team matches versus the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty. In 1992, SWS would close its doors, but by that summer, Tenryu started WAR, Wrestle and Romance, and Fuyuki would be joining him in WAR. In 1993, not only would Fuyuki wrestle for WAR, but he would also wrestle for New Japan Pro Wrestling, even competing in the 1993 G1 Climax. In 1994, Fuyuki would become a very busy man, wrestling for multiple promotions. Promotions like Now Network of Wrestling, NFW, New Fighting Wrestling. He would work his first show for FMW, along with his tag team partners Jado and Gato. He would return to CMLL in Mexico. He would work a few shows in New Japan, and he would have a very successful year in WAR. By this point in time, Fuyuki had started Fuyuki-gun with Jado and Gato, and they would be crowned the first ever WAR World Six-Man Tag Team Champions in 1994. Between 1994 and 1996, Fuyuki-gun would win the WAR World Six-Man Tag Team titles 5 times. In 1995 and 1996, Fuyuki would continue to work multiple promotions a year. In 95, he would work for WAR, New Japan, and IWA Japan. In 96, he would once again work for WAR, New Japan, and IWA Japan. He would also work for Kitao Dojo, the UWFI, Tokyo Pro, and Big Japan Pro Wrestling. In 1997, he would join FMW, and this is where Kodo Fuyuki would become a main event star. Not long after arriving in FMW, he would win his first piece of gold, as Fuyuki-gun, Kodo Fuyuki, Jado, and Geto would win the FMW World Six-Man Street Fight Tag Team Championships. In 97, Fuyuki also started promoting his own shows under the name Fuyuki Army Promotions. He would also work in IWA Japan. He would also work a handful of matches for the Yoshimoto Women's Pro Wrestling Group. He would also work Big Japan, and he would continue to do that schedule for another couple of years, but he would mostly focus on FMW. Fuyuki would feud with Atsushi Onita and his Zen group. That would be a running storyline throughout 1997. In 1998, Kodo Fuyuki would have one of the biggest years of his entire career. He would help form one of the most popular groups in FMW history, Team No Respect. A group of bad guys that were cheered by the fans. Now, the reason they were cheered by a portion of the fans was basically they were funny heels. Members of Team No Respect included Kodo Fuyuki, Mr. Ganosuke, Yukihiro Kanimura, Gedo Jado, Koji Nakagawa, Super Leather, Horace Boulder, Masao Orihara, Miss Mongol, Hiro, Hideki Hosaka, Tetsuhiro Kuroda, Takeshi Ono, and Go Ito. Fuyuki would win 2 FMW Brass Knuckles Tag Team titles, first with Hito and then with Yukihiro Kanimura. He would also win 2 more FMW 6-man Street Fight Tag Team titles. His second reign was with Hito and Yukihiro Kanimura, and his third reign would be with Koji Nakagawa and Yukihiro Kanimura. In November 1998, Fuyuki would finally win his first singles title, winning the FMW Double Title Championship by defeating Hayabusa. This would be the first World Heavyweight title for Kodo Fuyuki. He would hold the FMW Double Title Championship for 179 days. He would vacate the title, split the 2 belts up, give one to Kanimura and one to Ganosuke, and they would hold the titles for a while, before losing the titles to Hayabusa and Masato Tanaka respectively. Hayabusa would win the FMW Brass Knuckles title from Yukihiro Kanimura, while Tanaka would win the Independent Heavyweight title from Ganosuke. Hayabusa would then defend the Brass Knuckles title versus Ganosuke, and Tanaka would defend the Independent title versus Kanimura. After the match, both belts would be vacated and retired, as FMW was bringing in the WEW championships. At this point in time, FMW was really trying to separate themselves from Onita's FMW. No more barbed wire matches, no more blood and guts, more sports entertainment like the WWF. The titles that would eventually replace the FMW titles would be the World Entertainment Wrestling titles. There would be a World Heavyweight title, Tag Team titles, 6-man Tag Team titles, a Hardcore title, and eventually Hardcore Tag Team titles. One story that I heard about these belts is they were made super cheap, like a couple $100 a piece, and they did look cheap, but I always liked them. They look really nice to me. Fuyuki, Gedo, and Koji Nakagawa were crowned the first ever WEW 6-man Tag Team Champions. Just a few months after that, Fuyuki would crown himself the first ever WEW World Heavyweight Champion. His first reign with the WEW World Heavyweight title would not last very long, only lasting 60 days. He would lose the title to Masato Tanaka. This would be at FMW's 10th anniversary show known as Judgment Day, and he would lose the title in a Loser Leaves FMW 13,000 volt Thunderbolt Cage death match. Fuyuki would not stay away from FMW for very long, as he would come back as part of ECW, starting the ECW Japan group. In ECW Japan, alongside Kodo Fuyuki, would be women's wrestler Kyoko Inoue, Pitbull Gary Wolf, and Balls Mahoney. He would even win the WEW Tag Team Championships with Kyoko Inoue. Masato Tanaka would return from ECW, and he would basically kick Fuyuki out of his own group, saying that he was not ECW. Masato Tanaka would rename ECW Japan to simply ECW. At this point, Fuyuki was almost like a tweener, not really a good guy, not really a bad guy. He would win 3 more WEW 6-man tag team titles and 1 more WEW tag team titles in the year 2000. But his main goal was winning back the WEW World Heavyweight title. At this point in time, the champion is Tetsuhiro Kuroda. He's in his first reign, and Fuyuki wants the belt. On March 27, 2000, Kodo Fuyuki would challenge Tetsuhiro Kuroda, but the match would go to a no contest. The belt would be vacated, and they would rematch on May 5, 2000 at the Backdraft show. Kodo Fuyuki would win the title for a second time and would have his longest championship reign, holding the title for 331 days with 7 successful title defenses. He would defend the title 3 times against Hayabusa. One of these was a 60-minute Iron Man match that went to a draw. He would defend the title against Captain Jack, that would be like a pop star. Tetsuhiro Kuroda, Masato Tanaka, and Hisakatsu Uya before dropping the title back to Tetsuhiro Kuroda. After losing the WEW World Heavyweight title in 2001, he would only have one more title in 2001, being the WEW six-man tag team titles. In October of 2001, the worst possible thing that could happen to FMW happens. Their top star and their top draw, Hayabusa, would break his neck during a match versus Mammoth Sasaki. He would never wrestle again. FMW would only last another 4 months before closing its doors. But before FMW would close, Kodo Fuyuki would win his third WEW World Heavyweight title. He would hold that belt for 40 days, and he would also win the WEW Tag Team Championships with the Sandman, holding them 11 days. FMW would close its doors on February 15th, 2002, and Kodo Fuyuki would start the WEW promotion. Fuyuki had always wanted to rename FMW to WEW, but there was still too much name value to the FMW name. Now that FMW is bankrupt, Kodo Fuyuki has a chance with WEW. Unfortunately for Fuyuki, he would catch intestinal cancer. He would have his retirement match in Pro Wrestling Noah, teaming with Mitsuharu Misawa and Yoshinari Ogawa, defeating the team of Akira Taue, Masao Inoue, and Tsuyoshi Kikuchi. In 2003, he would come out of retirement and he would wrestle for the 0-1 promotion. He would have a 2-on-3 handicap match teaming up with Kentaro Kanimura and Tetsuhiro Kuroda, losing to Shinya Hashimoto and Tengu Kaisei. This was supposed to lead to an exploding barbed wire death match versus Shinya Hashimoto, but unfortunately, he lost his battle with cancer on March 19, 2003, at the age of 42. The match would still take place, but Kentaro Kanimura would take the place of his friend Kodo Fuyuki. Kodo Fuyuki would be cremated, and his ashes would be at that match. Both Hashimoto and Kanimura would take turns holding the box with Fuyuki's ashes, throwing themselves into the exploding barbed wire, basically saying Kodo Fuyuki's taking his final bumps. They did this while Kodo Fuyuki's wife was at ringside crying. To me, Kodo Fuyuki is an overachiever in wrestling. He teamed and feuded with some of the biggest names in Japanese wrestling, like Genichiro Tenryu, Riki Choshu, Atsushi Onita, Hayabusa, Mitsuharu Misawa, Akira Taue. He wrestled for the big promotions of Japan, All Japan, New Japan, Noah, FMW, and he's a 4-time World Heavyweight Champion, holding the FMW Double Title Championship and 3 WEW World Heavyweight Championships. It's interesting to think sometimes, if he had never left All Japan, how far would he have gotten in the company? I don't think he would have gotten past the World Tag Team titles. I don't think he would have ever been Triple Crown champion. Maybe a title defense against him, but I don't think he would have won the Triple Crown. And those are some of the reasons I like wrestlers like Kodo Fuyuki. They're not Triple Crown champion material. They're not IWGP Heavyweight champion material, but they can be a world champion in smaller promotions like FMW. It's also sad that his career finished so young. 42 years old is really not old. Where would his career have gone? Would he have gotten to Pro Wrestling Noah? Would he just join 0-1? Would he have continued with WEW? It's interesting to see where his career could have gone. But unfortunately, we'll never know. The WEW World Heavyweight Championship is still being defended to this day on smaller promotions in Japan. As of this recording, according to Cage Match, the current champion is Dylan James. He won the title on October 23rd, 2022. The current promotion using this title belt is Pro Wrestling A-Team. And with that, that will be the end of this episode. I hope you've been enjoying Wrestler Spotlight. Hope you've also been enjoying Japanese wrestling with the Maritime Warrior. And I hope you've been enjoying wrestling in 1990. I've got plenty more videos coming up every Friday at 6 p.m. So thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.